How's it going? I hope everyone has had an excellent week this week. My week has been pretty good, pretty busy. Just getting ready for this weekend. I'm heading out to New Jersey to do the Spartan New Jersey Beast down there in New Jersey this weekend. So it's my first time doing a Spartan Beast in a couple of years now. So I have some nerves about it. I don't have any real goals for this race, other than just go out there and have some fun. But yeah, a little nervous about it, which is a good thing. And yes, I'm gonna go down there with a couple of my friends. So it should be a good time. I'm excited to spend the weekend doing that, and have some fun doing some obstacle course racing. So I hope everyone else is can do something fun this weekend. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about a topic that often comes up. I hear people chatting about, and some people have very strong opinions about. Shocker, I know today. But it's about nuts. Yeah, nuts. Super exciting, I know. But I think it's a worthwhile topic to talk about because I think for the vast majority of people, nuts are viewed as a healthy food. Um, and unless you're a carnivore, in which case you think they're the devil probably, or you have a severe allergy to them, which you rightfully so think they are the devil. But yeah, for the most part, most people, universally, no matter what diet, philosophy, dogma you practice outside of carnivore, you probably view nuts as a somewhat healthy food. But there's a lot of, well, because they're viewed as healthy. They're often marketed very healthy. They're marketed in ways that maybe exaggerate the claims around nuts. So um, I want to talk about the good, the bad, the ugly around nuts and what place they might have for you in your diet. So, in the spirit of having this discussion, actually, Precision Nutrition, which is a nutrition kind of health coaching company that puts out a lot of great information. They have an awesome, well, I thought it was an awesome infographic about nuts and just talking about some of the common misconceptions or just common topics that often come up around eating nuts. So I wanted to kind of share that and talk a little bit about that a little bit, um, because it's really kind of a good discussion point. So I need to here. This is it. Yep. That. So you should be able to see this nice little infographic from Precision Nutrition. And I'll link to the webpage you can go where I got the infographic from. So if you read a little bit more about what they wrote, but just some kind of information about nuts at the top. Oftentimes we lump a lot of things into the under the term nuts that technically aren't really considered nuts, which for the most part doesn't particularly matter too much. Nuts are things like hazelnuts and chestnuts. Almonds, cashews, pistachios, pecans, walnuts, macadamia nuts, Brazil nuts are seeds of a stone fruit. So they're called drupes. I believe that's how you pronounce that, drupes. And then peanuts are actually are a legume, kind of like a bean. But they all get lumped in together under nuts for just common terms, but they're not all technically nuts. So just now you know type of thing. Um, there's some myths out there about almonds are healthier than peanuts. I think I think almonds and peanuts are probably the two most common types of quote unquote nuts that we often people consume. And you people debate back and forth about which one is better for your health. Um, I think when you're coming from the old school paleo approach, peanuts, because they're technically legumes, were not something that's typically considered in a paleo diet because legumes can oftentimes irritate people's stomach. And again, if anything, any food, I don't really care what it is. If you have some kind of adverse reaction to it, peanuts, legumes, whatever it may be, or almonds or cashews or macadamia nuts or whatever, obviously don't consume them. But if you can digest them, fine. Then I mean, there's no particular reason from a health point of view uh, that one is superior to another. And you can see here, almond the information for almonds on the top, and the information for peanuts on the bottom. Um, the red means that the one or the other is superior, right? So if you see red, that means peanuts um, are a little bit better in this category than almonds, right? Same here, right? If you see red down here, that means that almonds are a little bit better than peanuts. But you got to look at the absolute numbers here. Like for example, calories. 1 ounce of almonds. They're comparing 1 ounce of almonds and 1 ounce of peanuts together. Um, they're almonds is red here at 169 calories, but peanuts are 164 calories. It's a 5 calorie difference. That's not going to make or break anything. Maybe if you eat a lot of them, which you shouldn't, we'll talk about that in a little bit, then that might make a bigger difference. But if you're just talking about a serving of almonds or peanuts, the caloric amount, while this is red and this is green, this doesn't make a difference, honestly. You look at the macronutrients breakdown here, they're relatively pretty much on par. Like there's no significant difference here that's going to make or break you one way or another. Um, if you look at some of the vitamins and minerals that are included in here, we see a significant difference maybe in vitamin E, maybe in magnesium and but for the most part, in manganese a little bit, right? For the most part, they're relatively on par, right? They're not terribly different. So on this topic here, though, and we'll dive more into this in a second, but from a micronutrient point of view, we look at the differences here. Honestly, you should probably not be relying on nuts to get the vast majority of these micronutrients anyways. So does it really matter? I don't think so, right? Um, to get any kind of significant amount of these micronutrients in your diet, maybe outside of vitamin E or manganese, like I wouldn't be turning to nuts for niacin or folate or calcium, right? Or something like that, right? Um, I would be turning to, fruits and vegetables, which are going to be uh, better, most part better in these macronutrients, but also you'll be able to consume more of them with consuming far less calories because this is just 1 ounce of peanuts, you get this, right? And you're consuming 169, 160 plus calories in both cases. Whereas if you were to consume, you know, probably a pound of broccoli, you wouldn't come close to this, right? So I wouldn't be consuming nuts to get anything other than just really calories in your diet on a large scale. So they have some associations on whether or not certain nuts are associated with certain different things, right? And you have to keep in mind these are associations; they're not proof, meaning that they're associated with these outcomes, but they're not. It's not definitive that if you consume peanuts, for example, you're going to have improved memory and stress response, right? Or you're going to lower your risk of cancer, right? It's just association, so we can't um, we can't definitively link the two together. But there's some nice positives that you might are some added benefits, right? Um, Personally, I like to taste the peanuts over almonds. Um, and that's true for peanut butter. I prefer that over almond butter. Um, but outside of just eating raw nuts, what other places do we find nuts? This is probably the biggest. Um, and I think that they're kind of leaving out a little bit here. So they have like a eat more often scale if you're going to consume nuts or eat less often, right? So basically, the more processed they become, the less you want to eat them. The more just natural form they are, the better, right? So if you're just eating raw nuts or nut butter with nothing else in them besides just the nuts themselves, then you want to eat those more often as you process them more. So if you're dry roasting them, not bad, right? Literally just sticking them in the oven and roasting them to give them a different flavor. But lots of times you don't find dry roasted or just raw nuts. Most of the time you find oil roasted nuts, and lots of times they're roasted in oils that are probably not so good. You know, canola, seed oils, that type of thing. Which you probably want to avoid, and are just adding extra calories for calories' sake, your fats on top of fats. So if you're concerned about weight loss, you know that might be something concerned about, right? And we have flavored nuts. Again, you know, we're starting to get oftentimes the flavorings can be in question. Even if they're not in question, they're making them more easily consumed. Nuts are very easy to consume and overeat to begin with, and so that's a red flag. As I like to say, you know, candied nuts, right? Again, if we're gonna you know, I'll be the first to admit that if you take some walnuts and you sprinkle some maple syrup over them and you roast them, those things are absolutely delicious. I could eat several hundreds, thousands of calories in them. Um, so you start to add some sweetness. That combination of carbohydrate, sweetness, and fats are just very dangerous, as we know as humans. And that just makes them even more. Then we're going to add sweetness and chocolate on top of them, or process them further and make them into a nut butter, and then add additional sugars in like Nutella, and not to call out a specific brand, but you know, hazelnut butter, for example. You throw that on top of anything, and it's just again super delicious. And then you get into this nut-filled candy, where you're just like, peanut butter cups and candies that have nuts inside, etc. It's just, you know, it's less about the nut at that point and more about the candy. So you kind of want to stay away from that as much as possible, right? I think one of the things that they didn't put in here, which I wish they did, was nut flours and nut milks. Not so much nut milks, but nut flours. Those are going to fall under this, I think, red category a little bit. Not because there's inherently unhealthy in them. If you look at a nut flour like almond flour, for example, um, your there's nothing else in it besides pure almond flour, right? It just says almonds, right? So it's not an ingredient thing. But if you look up, I'm just going to do this quickly because I meant to do it beforehand. But if you look up the caloric content for the amount in almond flour, it's quite scary, right? So if we look here, oops, I'm just going to check here, nutritional information, right? Of course, the internet's going to be slow. Come on, internet, let's go. I don't have time for this. It's not doing anything. Where is it? Oh, here we go. God, for the love of... All right. So yeah, 2 tablespoons of almond flour, for example, have 80 calories in it, right? So I guarantee you're probably not consuming just 2 tablespoons of almond flour, because usually you're putting these in baked goods and they're usually by the cup at that point. So yeah, you're eating several hundred calories in nuts easily when they're processed in almond flours. The other thing where we get in trouble again with processing of nuts is you might find like nut-based protein bars or bars to eat. And yeah, again, it's very easy to eat your daily serving of nuts in one bar and eat several of those in a day, and think that's okay. So again, I think the ultimate problem here, outside of the processing of nuts, is that they're just super calorically dense, and you start to add things on the nuts, and you get the combination of fats and carbs, and you're ripe for overconsumption if you're not careful. Now, this is my favorite topic when it comes to nuts and people who are like, oh, nuts are a great source of protein. No. Just no. I think this graph says it all, right? Let's just take cashews, for example. Um, and you can pick any nut, it doesn't have to be cashews. Um, you know, we have cashews, they're 68% fat, and this is consuming like I think the same amount, right? Or just in ratios, right? Actually, it's not the same amount generally, but they're 68% fat, only 11% protein, 21% carbs. If you eat a chicken breast, you're getting 81% protein. Like so, all the calories that you eat, 81% of that is protein, and only 19% of it is fat, right? They're almost absolutely inverse of each other, and minus the carbohydrates. Not that that's an issue. But yeah, if you're looking to consume protein, you can find, if you're sticking to animal products or stick to your other plant-based protein sources, dairy. If you're a consumer of dairy, you're going to be much better off. And here, this graph also does it justice. Um, this is the per serving graph of nuts and other forms of protein, right? You look at spinach, hey, you're getting 1 gram of protein for a serving of spinach. In 1 ounce of chestnuts, which is one serving of nuts, you can also get 1 gram, right? You could eat a whole cup of spinach for far less calories and get the same amount of protein. So again, we're looking, even if you go to peanuts, you're eating 1 ounce of peanuts and you get 7 grams of protein. That's the highest one per serving, and anything else is 1 ounce, 3.5 ounces, which again is the same serving size of chicken breast, is 31 grams of protein, right? So if you're looking for protein, nuts are not where you're getting your protein from. Pretty much full stop. I don't care if you're plant based or animal based, right? It's just not a great source. Um, can nuts support fat loss and appetite regulation? I think so. I think it depends on where you're coming from, and I think this graph kind of, or this graph, this diagram kind of illustrates the point here. If you're coming from a highly processed standard American diet, where you're eating a bunch of fast food and stuff like that, super calorically dense, etc., and you're used to that food, and you're moving to and you're replacing some of that with nuts, nut butters and banana, or nut butters and celery, that type of stuff, you're probably winning out. You're definitely winning. Sorry, I don't even care what the calories are. You're definitely winning out. You're probably also not eating as many calories here, even though nuts are more calorically dense than we like to. I think where people get in trouble is when we go into kind of like a more high fat diet, or we're looking to we basically replace all of our snacking whenever we're hungry with nuts, right? And that's probably not the best approach. So yeah, and they're easy to overeat. The more processed you get, they're easy to consume, right? So if you're just consuming them as a condiment, I would think nuts are more like a condiment, and this kind of illustrates here. You want to do a thumb size of nuts, right? That's how you should measure out your nuts if you're not weighing or measuring them. Do a thumb size, and that's about it, right? That's all you should be consuming with some other food, basically. So as a condiment to some other food. So um, I think nuts are okay. I don't eat a ton of them. Occasionally, I will have them, mostly in the form of nut butter, or if I'm making some type of baked good, for birthday or celebration type of thing, I'll have nuts that use some type of nut flour. Mostly, I just don't. I don't. It's not that I don't enjoy them. I just know that they're super easy to overconsume and etc. So I'd rather consume some foods that are, you know, particularly more nutrient dense for the calories that I'm getting. And so I occasionally have them, but they're not a staple in my diet. I think for fat loss clients, I think that they should be a moderation type of food, if that's your goal. But overall, can they be healthy if they're consumed in the raw, unprocessed form? I think so. The more you start processing them, the more dangerous they can become, and detrimental you become, especially if you start adding things like sugars and oils and all kinds of stuff to them. So, yeah, that's basically it. What are your thoughts on nuts? How do you view them? What do you how do you use them in your own diet? Do you use them? What do you struggle with around nuts? Love to hear them. Leave a comment below. Happy to chat. As always, you can direct message me if you don't want to leave a comment. And if you want to get all the content that I put out on a weekly basis, please go to my website, rjbhealth.coach, and click the newsletter link at the top. Sign up for your newsletter. You'll get these videos as well as my blog posts delivered directly to your inbox. You don't have to stalk me on social media if you don't want to do that. And if you're interested in one-on-one coaching, I might be able to squeak you in. I'm pretty full at the moment, so I know I've been advertising that, and I've got quite a few clients over the past few weeks. So maybe I'll take you on as a client, but as always, I'll start a waiting list if I can't. So you might want to jump on that. You're going to rjbhealth.coach and click the schedule discovery call at the bottom at the top, and definitely at least chat with you for a little bit about that, and we can talk about that if you're interested in that. With that, I hope everyone has a good weekend, and I'll have a full report about my race next week if you want to hear about that for a little bit. And yeah, have a good weekend. I'll talk to you guys all next week.